Some people just cannot walk away from an overwhelming challenge. Just such a person? Well, meet Kate Bryan. Kate Bryan is an art historian, broadcaster, and art curator. Angelica and I have known Kate for about 10 years through the international art community, as well as various TV projects at Sky TV across Europe. With 20 years' experience in the art world, not only is Kate a talented broadcaster, she's a wonderful mum, a writer, and the curator of the Soho House Art Collection, with 10,000 artworks on display in 16 different countries. As you can imagine, she travels a lot. Now, Kate has published an important book that I think snatches art right out of the hands of all the snobs, the toffs and the posers and demystifies it for folks like us. The book carries the curious title of How to Art. I love it when people play with language like that. Well, enough of the introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Kate Bryan. So, Kate, welcome to Gary's in the Shed. It's lovely to see you.
Thank you for having me.
And congratulations on the book.
Thank you. Thank you. Very proud of it, actually.
Yeah, you should be. You should be. And I love the title.
I know, it's so funny. My daughter, I think, was 4, and she said to me, that doesn't make any sense. Like, she had better grammar than me. But I wanted something that was funny and down to earth and, big subject, but, punchy title.
Well, it certainly activates the curiosity.
Yeah. And I think that it was difficult to come up with a title that tried to get at what the book was about. And I didn't want a title that over-explained itself. So, I thought something that's got art in it, something that's punchy, and then get David Twigley to do the cover and, we'll go from there.
Well, I think a lot of people assume that appreciating art is a sport for the toffs and the posers, and you are certainly neither of those. So I think you're the perfect person to attempt this story, because I don't think anybody has ever attempted to do this.
No, I mean, effectively what I'm attempting to do is say to everybody, you don't have to educate yourself about art to have a relationship with it. I think there's so many people that feel really fearful, but you've got to read all these art history books before you can go into the National Gallery or the Tate or wherever you are in the world, or that you need to be a Rockefeller to be able to buy any art, and that you'd have to be Michelangelo to pick up a paintbrush, which is just absurd. And it's really not fair on people at all, and it's not their fault. I think there's so many things at play that definitely make people feel insecure when it comes to art, and definitely elaborate on this idea of art being quite an elitist subject, that, that there is great art, and if you don't get it, there's something wrong with you. And actually, I wanted to say just how you can decide what you want to watch on Netflix, or just how you can decide whether you like a meal, whether you like a piece of music, you have the exact same capabilities when it comes to art. The number of times people say to me, oh, I really like Tracy Emin, or I really like David Hockney. I don't know anything about art, but I really like them. But you'd never say, oh, I really love Coldplay, but I don't know anything about music.
People feel obliged to apologise for their lack of knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. And I just find it, I just don't think it's fair. And I think that art is such an enriching, exciting, joyful part of life, and that everybody can have access to it. And we know that people want to have a relationship with art. And also the thing that really inspired me actually was that everybody makes art as a child. So there are other elitist things like opera or wine tasting, but you're not doing that as a child. Everybody on the planet, the world over, makes art as a child. It's a fundamental form of expression. It's how we express ourselves before we can even speak. So the idea that you could take away something from people and turn it into an elitist subject when it was an intrinsic part of their life to begin with is really sad. And I think that has to be corrected. So it was quite a difficult undertaking. And basically, I'm trying to write this book about art, saying, listen, it's so great, it's so amazing, come on in, it's lovely, but without being pretentious and without using any art speak. Right. So I had to kind of unlearn a lot of my own things that I've learned from being in the art world for 20 years.
I have to say, it can be quite maddening reading art books, because some of the language and some of the gobbledygook that you have to fight through is pretty difficult.
It's mad, and it makes you think that like, A, it just puts you off entirely, or B, it might make you think, well, listen, I'm not smart enough for this. I don't have this sort of intellectual, psychological, like the Marxist interpretation of Impressionism. I'd rather put a fork in my eye than read Marxist impressionisms, like Marxist interpretations of Impressionism. I think that there is also a tendency in the contemporary art world to use really highfalutin language, and it actually obscures the art. You can't see the art because you're so mystified by all the stuff that people are saying. I have a whole section in the book about, campaigning to get rid of what I call International Art English, IAE, let's abolish it.
Yeah, you'll have success as long as you give it a 3-letter acronym. Somebody once said at Sky, we're going to ban TLAs. I said, what's TLA? Yeah. A 3-letter acronym.
Oh, right. There we go.
You made the point about children. It's so interesting, like it's said that Picasso always believed that he spent his entire adult life learning how to paint like a child.
Yeah, I think there's such freedom in that. And I think maybe there's something happens to us. Maybe it's, just when we're in primary school where someone says that your chair doesn't look enough like a chair. And so therefore you think you're not a good artist. We're all somehow under the tyranny of realism. We've been taught that great artists can make this look like this, and that is the only sort of mechanism of making art. But that's like a really Western perspective. The realism comes around in the Renaissance 500 years ago. But actually, if you look at other artistic traditions throughout the world, realism isn't reigning supreme. Take Aboriginal Australian art. That's not about, as we would understand it, a kind of perspective, depth, representational objects. That's not what that art is about. It's no less art for that. It's a supreme type of art. So I think maybe we get hung up on these kind of rules of art, these hierarchies of art. And actually, I just wanted to kind of blow it all apart and say, fundamentally, not only is there no one way of making art or one type of great art, but also that you don't have to like it all. It's quite refreshing just to say, yes. You know what? You're not supposed to like it all. My husband plays me rock music. I want to put earplugs in. It's horrendous. I absolutely hate it. I just got no time for it. Do I deny that it exists as music? No. Can I just live with the fact that I don't like it? Yes. And I think you should just be able to do the same about art.
Yeah, so you mentioned Aboriginal art. So there's a wwonderful Emily and Worry exhibition right now at the Tate Modern.
Yeah.
So that's really beautiful.
Yeah, really special. And I think it's a whole artistic tradition that it's really fascinating to be able to engage with, especially in this country, which we haven't been able to do that.
Australian Aboriginal art was very badly damaged by fakers. The market was flooded with fakes for a long time.
Yeah, which is just a horrendous way of taking advantage of artists and people.
Very hurtful.
Yeah.
So art appreciation is a very complex subject. So, and you've tried to address this in the book very well, I think, and that is, so summarise for us, what are you looking for when you are looking at a work of art?
Well, if it depends what context it's in. So if I'm just in an exhibition with my daughter, then with her, taking a 6-year-old to a gallery, I'm trying to get her to pay attention to the pictures, and just in a really casual way, no pressure. So what can you see? What colours are there? Maybe you can point out 6 things in the picture. Do you like it? How do you compare it to this one? So in a really basic way, I think it's just nice to remind people that actually enjoying art is as simple as that. It's just a simple act of visual engagement, and that don't get obsessed about reading the label. Sometimes I think people have a problem that they maybe even spend more time reading the label than looking at the artwork, as if somehow that's got the answer. That's the kind of, this is the secret to the painting, read this and then see this. And sometimes that may give you a useful context. You're like, okay, the Monet paints the Gare Saint-Lazare around the time of the birth of the steam engine, so he's painting the steam of the trains. Okay, yeah, useful point, thanks very much. But sometimes the caption says something that you just has no reference for you, or doesn't unlock that picture in any way. And actually, ultimately, you read the caption, then you look at the picture, and there's a disconnect, and then you kind of put off. And ultimately, I want people to just be able to bring their own thoughts, feelings, emotions, history, relationships, life to bear when they're looking at an artwork. And a lot of the times the art might not do anything for you, but sometimes it will be really special. And I think it's looking for those special connections. And ultimately, I just try and break a lot of this down in the book. So it's not about reading tons and tons and tons of stuff in order to have a relationship with art. It's about reminding yourself that you are already perfectly you're perfect as you are, exactly as you are, with your whole life references, your experiences, how you feel about colour, how you feel about texture, how you feel about all of these things. You've got all that information already. You just have to kind of tune into it, because if we have an art anxiety, Like, oh, Rothko. Okay, I've heard of him. He's a big deal. He's a famous artist. And you kind of go into the Rothko room and you're like, oh, I think I'm supposed to find this really moving, or I'm supposed to think X, Y, and Z, and it's not happening for you. Then the problem is that it's almost as if there's something wrong with you. And I think for so long, the messaging around art has been just too strident, too intellectual, too didactic, too dogmatic. And I think we have to free ourselves from it, because it really worries me that not enough people will come to art otherwise. That's a problem. I conducted a survey this summer, just before the book came out, a YouGov survey, and it was like representative of the UK. And there was this really alarming statistic, which is that only 19% of adults in this country had taken a child to a museum or a gallery. And when asked, would you like to, the percentage was high. And when asked what the barriers were, you'd expect time to be a big problem. I haven't got enough time. I get it, we're really busy. 19% said they didn't have enough time. 21% said they weren't confident enough.
Self-confidence.
And
this is you need permission.
Exactly. And this country has terrible weather, and museums and galleries are free to go into.
Yeah, what a better way to spend a rainy Sunday.
Exactly, a great thing to do.
Yeah.
And that's not the fault of those parents or carers. That is the fault of those museums and galleries that have not communicated strongly enough that these spaces are community orientated and that they are ours for the taking.
Yes. I think for somebody like me who's got a real impatience problem, I think the idea of just wandering past 50 pictures in a gallery and just waiting for somebody to capture your attention is a really bad way to do it.
Yeah.
I force myself sometimes just to stop and be patient and just allow yourself to absorb what you're looking at. And you find things that are really quite surprising.
Yeah, I think in a way, I always try and describe it. I think we kind of, if we're feeling anxious or uncertain about the experience, we go in. Maybe the building itself makes you anxious. Think about these kind of big colonial edifices we have with these sort of like monumental pediments and these big columns, and they're sort of so bombastic, and they speak of power and status, and you feel small, and maybe you feel a bit irritated, like, why do we have all this stuff? Where did this stuff all come from? Or like, who owns this stuff? And I think that there's a lot being done to undo that. And when people do try and undo those power structures, they're so successful so quickly. Like, look at the Tate Modern. The architecture was an old power station transformed into an art gallery. It had escalators like a shopping mall does. It has sliding doors. Come on in. There's no doorbell. There's no big sort of architectural imposing facade. And it has space for your kids to run around. They do summer holiday programming. They do half-term programming. They have like large print guides. They have baby changing facilities, cafes. I mean, when they opened, people were really snobbish about the fact that the cafe was so prominent and that you could get burger and chips in the Tate. People were really, really funny about it.
Yeah.
Like the idea that was suitable. But somehow effectively they'd sort of deconsecrated the temple by possibly imagining that it might be fun or inviting. Yeah. And of course, it then went on to become one of the most popular places to see art in the world. And I think helped people in this country have a much better relationship with modern contemporary art that they might not otherwise have had. And it was because it sent out these messages. It really tried to have like a warm embrace. It's so successful.
Yes. So moving on from art appreciation to art making, which is something I'd for all my life been struggling with. You did a very good job, I think, of laying out a process for people all the way through to becoming professional at it. So,
well, that's nice of you to say, because I know that you really do make art and you make it in a serious way, and you have done for a long time. So I'm glad. I do feel a bit nervous about people reading the bit where I'm sort of advising artists, because I think, well, I'm not an artist, but I basically...
Nor am I. So.
You are. And I think that... what I did is actually just have loads of conversations with artists. It's one of the great privileges of my job, like making TV programs with a whole bunch of artists, or working as a curator, that I spend all my time with artists. And so, yeah, it's great. You can borrow all this information and synthesize it and put it back out. But there are two distinct parts in the book. One is that, we should all be making art. It's good for us. Definitely as a mental health strategy, as something which is good for our well-being and good for our creative juices, that we could all make art. And I was really motivated to write that because actually David Strigley, who's done all the art for the book, is a huge campaigner for mental health awareness around making art therapy. He has his own charity where he does all those kind of things. And actually I made art every single day as a child, all the way through till I was about 21. And I graduated with an art history degree and just thought, exactly like other people feel, I'm not good enough. I'll stop making art and I just talk about art now. And I feel very fulfilled creatively, especially as a curator and a writer. But I have to say, when I had my daughter, I started making art again with her. And I just thought, I cannot believe I didn't do this properly for 18 years or something. I mean,
it's the perfect meditation.
It's so good. And I started to really study what's happening when we're making art and what's happening in the synapses of our brain and this sort of all of these things that are happening, which are just so deeply embedded in our psyche, and why they're good for us. It's really, really good for us. And to try and also I tried to put some fun stuff in there, like have a painting party with your mates. Like, you don't have to be Adele to do karaoke. No one's expecting you to be a Grammy award-winning singer when you do karaoke. But somehow when we pick up a paintbrush, we all somehow think that we're suddenly supposed to be Frida Kahlo. And of course we're not. But this doesn't take away the pleasure. Just like picturing part is great fun. I'm terrible at golf. So I think it was about celebrating that and that. And then the other section, which is the one beyond that you mentioned, is how to be an artist, which was really important for me to write. Probably not very commercial. There aren't that many artists. The book is designed to have a big mainstream audience. You know, it could be for everybody to read. But of course, only, you know, we can all art, but only some of us can be artists. But I wanted to write that because I think it's quite useful to unlock the art world from the perspective of an artist, you know, trying to see it how they might see it. But secondly, that we can all learn a lot from artists. And there's a lot in there about staying motivated and procrastination, all that kind of stuff, which affects everybody. But really, I wanted to do it because I love artists and I spend so much time with them. And I spend so much time with them giving them feedback on things that they have otherwise no information on, how to price their artwork, you know, whether they should put for sale signs on their websites, what they should be doing with their Instagram, how to write their artist statement. Because even if you go to college and you're lucky enough to have an art degree, which most people aren't, they're still not really teaching you the business of being an artist.
No. I like you, I have a few friends, or you've got many friends. Friends who are artists are always so interesting because they've got very little in common. They're all very different. But one common thread, and I've got great sympathy for them, that displaying your art is like being naked on the corner of the street. And I've never done it, but I can, you know, friends of mine who go through the torture of preparing an exhibition, it must be such a challenge to get yourself beyond that fear thing.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I think that's one of the challenges that artists have is that sometimes they're really asked to explain their work. And they're kind of saying, well, everything I think is in the work. You know, if I had words for all of this, I'd be a writer or a poet. I'm an artist. And so I think that puts them on edge, that makes them nervous about how to sort of justify something that might have been really intuitive or that had been very processed and very labor intensive and involved a lot of thought, but it manifested itself in these visual objects and that they're actually quite difficult to explain. And then the other thing that I think is difficult for artists is that actually there's a real come down after you show your work. No matter how successful, it's like this kind of birth. It's like this big thing's happened and then you're kind of back to the beginning again.
Yes.
You know, it's very difficult to sustain that level of energy. I try to be quite mindful of that. And, you know, a few days after, and a great friend of mine who's an artist has had to show her his message and say, you know, just give yourself some time. Don't expect yourself to get straight back in the studio.
Well,
you know, go for a walk.
I find it remarkable, you know, an artist has a successful exhibition, he leaves that room and now he's already under pressure to create another 50 pictures. When you can have them ready, you know, so how about next week? You know?
Yeah, it's really difficult. And I think that, and also the other thing that's really difficult for artists is keeping going when you don't have exhibitions, when you don't have gallery representation, when you haven't got that stuff yet, you know, having some sort of internal drive that says, you're a good artist, you should do this, you should keep making things. That's really important to try and find that voice inside you. And it's not always so easy for people. You know, artists are, exactly as you say, all very different. But one thing that I think unites them all is that they're all working in isolation.
Yes.
This is a business for one person mostly, unless you're in a duo or something. It's really, it can be lonely. It can be very difficult to stay motivated.
And the reaction to the book's been very positive, eh?
Yeah, it's been really, really lovely. I tell you what's been funny is having these like quite philosophical conversations with people because it's almost an invitation. It's almost once you say there aren't all of these rules and, you know, that I get asked really difficult questions and I'm really enjoying the challenge of it. But, you know, people saying to me, so what's the difference between art and craft? You know, am I any less of an artist because I'm a potter? And, you know, I've really had like to really think about these like quite complex philosophical ideas. And And it's been really enjoyable, honestly. I feel, I almost in a way, I feel like a weight's been lifted. I've been kind of going through the sticky web of the art world for 20 years. And I love it. I'm madly in love with it. But because I'm not from an elitist background and so many people in the art world are, I think in a way, I almost sort of did what I thought was appropriate, which is like I sort of educated myself. I came up to the standards of the art world and I dress nicely, present nicely. I educate myself over and over and over again to be good enough. And it's quite freeing to actually just be like, that's great because it's my job. And I should be working this hard and that's right. But everybody else doesn't have to have this like rigorous, complex dynamic with the art world. Everybody can just have a lovely, warm, fulfilling relationship with art that isn't about all of those things, and we don't have to get bogged down with £1 million artworks. We can have this whole other relationship. And in a way, it's a bit of a weight's been lifted for me to be able to talk about it in this way, because I've been kind of secretly thinking it and sometimes really seething. And now I'm like, I definitely feel like I've kind of can really see it clearly. I feel very lucid and excited about it all.
Well, you've nailed it.
That's very sweet.
How to art, I think, is a really important piece of work, and it's come from somebody I care a lot about. So thank you so much, Kate.
Thank you so much, Gary.
Lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you too.
And thanks for being on Gary's in the Shed.
I want to be in the shed next time.
Listen, you're welcome anytime.
Yeah, I'm coming to the shed.
Anytime. Please do. Thank you.